Good evening, everyone. My name is Lynn Worley. I'm school board president. I call the May 12th, 2025 school board meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. We are in conference room C of the Fisher Administrative Building at 12121 West North Avenue. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting this evening. Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski? Here. Mr. Bauer?
Here.
Ms. Bach? Here. Mr. Morris?
Here.
Ms. Heimer-Rolland? Here. Dr. Worley?
Here.
Mr. Wadier?
Here.
Thank you. We will move to public comment.
Good evening.
Can you just wait a second? I have to read a couple of things. You're fine. No worries. We have a little routine here. Just so everyone in the room knows, Mr. Morris will be letting you know the 3-minute timing, and Mr. Bauer will be keeping track of the 30-minute time period. And I just need to read this statement before we start. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with the members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding the non-agenda items that are mentioned this evening. Thank you. Now, will you come up to the mic and thank you for being here?
Thank you, Troy Woodard. On May 7th, I was honored to be nominated to serve on the Secondary Schools Ad Hoc Committee. As a facilities planner and a capital strategist, I saw this as an opportunity to contribute meaningfully to our future of our district. The nomination felt like recognition, not just of my professional background, but of the importance of parent voices in shaping our schools. That feeling was short-lived. Within hours, a social media call to action from my neighborhood elementary PTSA questioned my appointment based on the assumption that I couldn't represent my community school, Washington, if my children currently attended WSTEM. That evening, during my family's bedtime routine, I received a phone call from Superintendent Damon Means. During that call, I felt pressure to misrepresent truthful information about our family's school intentions for the 25-26 school year in order to retain my position. I informed him that that was not how I operate. We discussed how WSTEM wasn't even listed as an option on the application, even though it remains as an operating school for 1 more year. We brainstormed options for a WSTEM representative to be included in the committee, but Damon said he was going to think about it. Rather than acknowledge the flaw in the application and process, I was just removed from the committee. No further dialogue, just a website update. Another decision made behind closed doors without transparency. This felt like an engineered attempt to silence a parent voice, one connected to a school community that has long been treated as unwelcome. WSTEM families have repeatedly been left out of district conversations. Now, even my own neighborhood school has said I cannot represent them, despite this committee's purpose being to shape secondary school outcomes, not elementary. I was selected to this committee based on my qualifications and dedication to collaboration. But this incident exposed something deeper: politicization, exclusion, and a lack of trust. I was selected. Most troubling, I believe Superintendent Means' actions were unethical. Asking a parent to revise truthful information to fit a political narrative is a serious breach of public trust. I believe this calls his professional integrity into question, and I respectfully call for his resignation. And now, with the May 9th McKinley memo from Bulow and Vetter, confirming that the Fisher Building was fully aware of McKinley happenings, the pattern of administrative failure grows even more evident. This is about more than one committee seat. It is about trust, leadership, and accountability. And our students deserve all three.
We do have a rule that we cannot attack members in the room. I'm just going to pause for a couple of minutes. We'll hold the clock on the 30. Okay, we're going to resume. I'm going to ask future speakers to not get into the personal in a negative sort of way. I understand there are other ways to make these kinds of requests. And the board, of course, is here to receive requests and comments. But let's try to keep this on, collaborative and stay away from personal communications. Okay.
I think it's too late for someone to attack my character publicly and to lie is unacceptable. The deterioration of this community continues to manifest itself in this board, but I will not be lied on. That is dishonest. And you want to talk about politicization? That happened right here this evening. I'm sorry, Dr. Worley.
Oh, you need
I have
not
never
give
in
any
my entire
apologies.
career had someone actually misuse the truth the way that this just happened. It's unbelievable.
Dr. Means, it's very heavy. You work very hard for this district. And I'm sorry that this was brought into a public space in this way. It's very unfortunate. And it's not why we come together, although there are always opportunities to express concerns. I don't think that putting that out there in the way that you did is, Mr. Woodard is really respectful of the space that we have here as a school board. We'll have to think as a board a little bit about process, what happens next. Yeah.
I'd also encourage the other adults in the room to realize how they're treating the board as a whole during public comment in this administration. It's one thing to have disagreements, and we can have those in a healthy way, but the cheering and the clapping when somebody stands in front of this board is embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage the adults in the room to really think about if our students were sitting in here, and we do have students watching us all the time, think about what we would expect from our students at school.
Thank you, Ms. Harmon, for raising that up. We do expect comportment and fair treatment of people. Please, if you agree with the speaker, just speak with the speaker afterwards, okay? Let's not have, it doesn't change the board's minds if 20 people clap their hands. We listen to all of these pieces. We listen to what we've been emailed as well.
I'm not. I've never in my, no, I'm not. I've never, this is unbelievable. No, I don't need to step
He
out.
does not need
But I'm going to look people who lie about me and my character straight in their eyes. And they have to live what they've done. If you don't mind.
Dr. Means, I'd like to invite you to have some space to particularly address, if you don't, what raises concerns in the comment that you just heard and the accusations that were made. We're going to pause public comment for this in terms of timing, and then we'll come back to it. And I'm going to ask folks to think about in public comment how to share that in a way that is gets your ideas and emotions across, but does not target a particular person in the room.
I was made aware by members of the Washington school community that Mr. Woodard was not a member of the Washington school community. I received several emails from that community. Our committee that I facilitated did select him as a member of the committee because of his qualifications, as he stated. But after receiving those emails, I felt inclined to call him to ask if his intention was to be a Washington parent or not. I shared with him that we did not disqualify him because he does live in the Washington attendance zone area, and that he was the only WSTEM family that made an appointment with our Division of Pupil and Family Supports to look at other options after the closure of the school had been made public. I shared with him that he didn't have to make a decision right then and now, that if his family needed time over the summer to continue to consider their placement, that would be justification for him to represent Washington, because there's a possibility that he could be a member of the Washington community. So to allege that there was something nefarious or unethical about my behavior based on that statement, I think that just shows you the character of the individual who spoke. Mr. Woodard shared with me that he was made aware that there was a campaign from the Washington school community to have him off the committee and not represent Washington. I don't know if there was a campaign or not, but I was responsive to the families of Washington. So I called him, and I felt it was the right thing to do, not to operate by email, but to actually reach out and call him personally. To know that any conversation can be twisted that way to serve the narrative that someone wants to fill in this community is disgusting. There was no decision made behind closed doors. It's pretty clear. The application stated that we were looking for people to represent buildings, not schools. The gentleman referenced that WSTEM was not listed as a school, so he wasn't sure what to do. That's fair. But he could have listed Wilson. He chose not to. He chose to list Washington. I understand that the closure of WSTEM has been emotional for people, but that does not call for us to twist words and to create narratives that fits something that works for a certain side in this community. So, Dr. Worley, I appreciate you giving me the chance to explain what happened. That's my perspective on what occurred. I have no reason to not tell the truth. That's exactly how the conversation went.
And I want to confirm that you've been very transparent with our board about this as well. So
This is shocking.
we had not, we've been made aware of the process and the concerns that were raised, and the handling of it, and your approach in trying to open up a conversation to help the parents be aware of what it would be as a process if they still wanted to participate. But that does not mean, I just want to add, I don't see that as meaning that you were asking for that change. You were just trying to lay out the guidelines of how the committee was put together and trying to keep the integrity that everyone had agreed on in the district about how that committee would be formed.
That's all. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay. We will resume public comment. Next.
My name is Ann Carlin. We are here tonight in the wake of a formal investigation that confirmed what many of us have known for many months. McKinley is in crisis, and the legitimate voices of staff and parents have been stifled. I stand before you to share my story because I think it substantiates the documented governance failure. My husband and I have lived most of our lives in Wauwatosa. We attended elementary school through high school, both graduating from Wauwatosa East. We moved to Green Bay after our wedding, where we lived for 8 years. We moved back to the Milwaukee area so that my husband could pursue a degree. It was only natural to settle in Wauwatosa. After all, this was our home. Both our children attended elementary school through high school in Wauwatosa, graduating from Wauwatosa West. Created a little bit of a family rift. The school district continued to be highly ranked, and we wanted our family to enjoy the benefits we had received. We love this community. In the spring of 2021, I retired following a productive and rewarding career in healthcare. During my career, I had opportunities to teach at the university level. The transition into a second act as a substitute teacher seemed like the perfect opportunity to continue to be productive in retirement and to give back to the community that had given me and my family so much. I landed a part-time position as a building substitute in the district. I served 2 days per week at McKinley Elementary and transitioned to a rotating role between Roosevelt and McKinley in the fall of 2024. Something changed this past fall. Usually assignments for the spring semester were available in Red Rover in the fall. This year, no assignments. I sent several email messages to Human Resources at the central office. No response. I communicated with my representative at EduStaff, who confirmed that the district was experiencing delays in updating the assignments in Red Rover. On January 2nd, I showed up to McKinley as I would have normally been scheduled. To my shock and surprise, the principals at McKinley and Roosevelt informed me the building substitute positions had been cut from a total of 9 down to 4 throughout the district. If I wanted to continue as a building substitute, I would be on call on my scheduled days to any elementary school in the district. The principals received this news from the central office the day prior to their communication with me. They were given no explanation for the decision or the
You'll
way
need
in
to
which it
finish,
was
please.
communicated.
The time has been called. You'll need to finish. The 3 minutes is done.
Suffice it to say, I resigned from my, so I have to step away or I can finish.
You need to go to your last sentence, whatever your wrap up is, please.
It's Chris Merker. And this top of the page. The environment is 99% of any job. I was not comfortable with a constant shifting environment. I built positive relationships with the staff and students at McKinley and Roosevelt. I resigned as a building substitute and as a substitute in the district. I have shifted to a volunteer role at McKinley. I continue to mentor students in reading and math. I know firsthand about the McKinley controversy. It is not my place to tell personal stories. What I can corroborate is an atmosphere where fear and discouragement predominate. Eroded trust between the district and educators is a reality. The community is watching. The board must act in the best interests of all the stakeholders. Healthy public schools are an essential component to strong communities. We have a crisis. Per student spending far exceeds that of other successful surrounding school districts, and outcomes are unacceptable. Accountability is no longer optional. Now is the time for transparency, fiscal accountability, and a genuine commitment to our children. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
We have another speaker. I just want people to be clear why we ask you to stop at 3 minutes. It's fine to do what just happened, and that's because we have a limited amount of time, a very packed agenda, and we want all the voices online and here in the room to go ahead. You may come. We still have time.
there. Zach DeVillers. I'm actually here because I have a wife at home with a sick kid. So I would like to share what my lovely wife does. She is a avid volunteer from McKinley School. And I'm going to read what she had prepared to talk about. Good evening. I'm a McKinley parent. I was volunteering at the school on Friday, this past Friday, the same day that the district released its investigative report on McKinley. As I was leaving, I turned to Mr. Martin and simply said, "Have a nice weekend." His response without hesitation was, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm never going anywhere." I was taken aback. It wasn't what I expected, and it made me feel uncomfortable. It felt less like a reply and more like a message. A moment of defiance on the very day a report came out confirming the climate of fear and harm that so many staff have described. I'm not here to speculate about what he meant. I'm here to say I didn't feel like accountability. It felt like confidence, unshaken, undeterred. So I'll leave the board with this. Why would Mr. Martin say that? And more importantly, why would he be so confident? That's not a question for him, it's a question for you. Thank you, my lovely wife. Now for mine. I moved here in 2019. I was where I wanted, this was where I wanted my business to be. I'm a business owner in Wauwatosa. This is where I wanted to bring up my family. I also, for credibility, have two teachers that are parents and retired from Ashwaubenon Middle School. I'm disappointed in the leadership at McKinley since Dr. Hoffman left. The lack of accountability for managing the district's money and how we plan to become a top-notch educational institute for our next generation. That's all I got.
Again, I'm going to ask people not to clap after comments. If you have something you want to say related, you may get in line for the 3-minute time period while we still have time left. We have about 10 minutes left if there's anyone else who had a comment this evening. Jamie, I don't see any hands on. Are there people online? Could you?
Yeah,
pick one of
there are 3 people with their hands raised online.
them, please?
You want to proceed with them? Yeah.
Yes, we'll move to online right now.
Okay. The first one is Annie iPhone. You have the microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Annie Marino, and I'm the parent of a McKinley student, an active volunteer at the school, and a regular attendee of school meetings. I respectfully and urgently request a new principal at McKinley. The Wauwatosa School District must hold its leaders to higher standards. Responsibility for low staff morale and a psychologically unsafe school culture does not sit equally between a principal and staff, regardless of who did what. A principal is a leader, a role model who must rise above. They must act maturely, professionally, and with integrity, earn and maintain the trust of staff in the school community, and be held accountable for their actions. When a leader fails to meet these standards, the result is a McKinley situation. Staff lose trust and respect for the leader, morale plummets, the organization's reputation suffers, and resources are overspent on repair efforts. If the notion that change is hard is used to keep Principal Martin at McKinley, I believe this perpetuates a false narrative that a resistance to change rather than leadership failures in implementing change are the main cause of the McKinley problem. I believe the true issue lies in Principal Martin's failure to properly collaborate, motivate, and inspire staff, adapt to build trust, and then through that foundation, effectively implement change. The May 9th investigation report reveals that 75% of staff expressed concern about Principal Martin's poor communication, and 63% of staff reported both fear of retaliation for expressing contrary opinions and being unfairly blamed by Principal Martin. These statistics are deeply troubling. It is no surprise that McKinley staff report barriers to collaboration, a toxic work environment, lack of trust in leadership, and low morale. The most devastating part of the McKinley situation is the notion that anyone believes parties involved are okay with some students excelling and others being left behind, which is a suggestion Principal Martin has repeated regarding McKinley staff. This is gut-wrenching. When I am in the building, I have only observed the care for all kids from every staff member. The investigation report concludes that until McKinley's educators can confront issues head on and in good faith, McKinley's culture will not benefit all members of the community. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how staff can repair and confront issues head on and in good faith when it's been suggested that McKinley staff don't want all kids to succeed. In sum, I believe the root of the McKinley problem lies in the school leaders' failure to properly collaborate, motivate, and inspire staff, adapt to build trust, and then, through that foundation, effectively implement change. It is my respectful request that within this issue, we show our kids and our school community that our district holds its leaders to the highest standards and therein replaces Principal Martin. Thank you for your time.
Jamie, could we move to the second online comment?
Kayla's iPhone, you have the microphone.
Hi, this is Kayla Merker. When my husband was interviewed by an attorney for the McKinley investigative report early last week, he asked directly how the list of the 9 parents to be interviewed was determined. The attorney responded to him that the list was provided by Dr. Means. So, Dr. Means, you've said repeatedly that you won't be influenced by outside pressures and that you will rely solely on the data in the report. But I have to ask, how does gathering input from only 9 parents qualify as valid data or meaningful discovery? How can that be discussed?
Merker, I will cut you off if you don't listen to me for a second. The rule of public comment is that you are to address the officer in the room. That would be me. So you're welcome to ask your questions, but please direct them to me. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Dr. Worley, we have heard that Dr. Means, can I state that? Because in order to get my point across, I have to use this, that he won't be influenced by outside pressures and that he'll only solely rely on data in the report. But I do have to ask a question. How does gathering input from only 9 parents qualify as valid data or meaningful discovery? How can that be considered a representative sample when many more parents have spoken publicly at this evening's board meetings, at previous board meetings, even community members spoke out in February, and I know several emails, multiple emails have been sent dating back to November. And it's not just directly to the superintendent, but it was to the entire board. So I'm trying to understand the process. Who is responsible for identifying these 9 individuals? Was it Dr. Means? Was it Mr. Martin? Or was it someone from his team? Because if the goal was to collect broad and representative feedback, why weren't the 17 families who signed an original email that was sent over 2 weeks ago that raised concerns in the recent McKinley letter, along with the broader group of families with a wide range of perspectives? There's a concern in the community that the selection process may have favored voices with particularly positive experiences, potentially limiting the diversity of parent input. While every family's story matters, a process that doesn't reflect the full spectrum of a community experiences risks undermining public trust and producing an incomplete picture. Thank you.
Thank you. We're not agendized to discuss McKinley tonight, but we have all listened to this comment and we will continue to look into what you've requested. Thanks for rephrasing it. I appreciate that. We have one more online comment that we'll take now.
Seth and Catherine, forgive the pronunciation, Peterhood. You have.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Catherine Hudson, Washington Elementary. I just am calling in on behalf of the parents of Washington to say thank you to the district and to the board for ensuring that the secondary ad hoc committee adheres to what it was intended to do, which is to give voice to parents and guardians of currently enrolled students at every school in the district. We are a very inclusive community. However, we were very concerned when we saw that the parent representing our school community and who was going to give voice to us was not a parent at the school. The district responded to our concerns, and we are incredibly thankful that we are now going to have representation on the secondary ad hoc committee. I just want to say that I feel like it reflects something that I hear parents asking a lot of the district, which is to acknowledge when mistakes are made, and to rectify those mistakes. And so I'm going to speak on behalf of dozens and dozens of parents at Washington who just want to say that thank you for that, and that we are just grateful that we will have our voice heard on that committee. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other hands online?
Yeah, there is one more. Oh, two more now. No, sorry, one more now.
Okay, just hold 1 second. Are there any other folks in the room who are planning on speaking? I just want to divide the time fairly. Okay, seeing no others in the room, we'll go with the two who are online.
It's just one now. Jessica Haywood, you have the microphone.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. My name is Jessica Haywood. I have a son at WSTEM. I spoke at last board meeting. I just want to say I find it a little concerning that we could, as a group, as we speak to the school board, be able to, excuse me, direct our comments to you, but we are unable to make a direct comment about a member of the board or about a member of the administration. It hurts our souls that WSTEM was specifically left off of the secondary committee. Troy, Mr. Woodard, could not have put Wilson as a representation because that probably would have been more of an outcry than just using his actual homeschool. I am not one to discuss logistics about how he was taken off a committee or added to a committee. That is a mistake that was made. I do not think Mr. Woodard, by any means, would have tried to trick the Washington community into thinking that he wanted to represent them. He was representing his own voice. And I understand Washington wanted a representation from their school, but so did WSTEM, and that was not an option. I do find it extremely disheartening that a rebuttal was then allowed to take place for 10 minutes of this time where Mr. Woodard's character then got attacked. And that is absolutely what it looked like from an outsider, that Dr. Means got to sit there and say that he was upset by how he was treated and spoke to the character of Mr. Woodard, which was in fact doing the exact same thing that he said he would not stand for. I would just like some accountability on if one person isn't allowed to do it, then perhaps the leader of our district also should not be allowed to do it. Thank you.
Again, I'm going to ask for no clapping in the room. If you would like to speak, you may come to the microphone. We actually saved all the time, 30 minutes for the public. We will return to public comment if there's anyone else who would like to speak. I do want to say that I did not say you could not speak about issues. What I said was we have a bylaw for public comment, and it says that you must direct your comment to the officer in the room. And I think the rest of it is just general human dignity expectations about how we speak with each other. We want to be productive here. We want to hear voices. We appreciate those who can't come and reach out us by email or phone calls. We really welcome that. As a board member, our goal is to really sort through all the different perspectives and information. That's different than the role of a staff member. So we do look to all of you to reach out and to talk with us, but we just really want it to be conversation. You can have different opinions without being unkind to others. And you can bring your concerns. I brought them before I was on the board. I was often at this microphone. And I think it's really great that our community does this. Not every school board gives this much time over, and we will continue. Last week, we even added more time. so that parents could be heard. So I just want to note that we're just asking for a way of conversing with each other so we can really hear each other. I will promise you that I feel that when people deliver their comments in that kind of collaborative way, it actually has a stronger impact in the long run on people being able to hear you. So, not seeing other public comment in the room, last call. Okay, well, if you have to speak to a different issue, that's another rule, right? So you only speak once for 3 minutes to a single issue. So you would have to change what issue you're talking about. But you may step to the microphone, but please, 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 let's not get personal. Thank you.
Understood. Troy Woodard. I believe the one sole employee that reports to this board is the superintendent. Is that correct? So I guess I don't have to speak on the public comment at board meetings. I believe the board would be beneficial to take a look at what the reporting structure for community feedback on their one employee might be.
Thank you. Okay, we will close public comment. We are going to move to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action?
Board President, I do have one.
Okay. you have
If we
one?
could pull policy 3310, the one on employee expression on non-instrumental settings, I would appreciate that, please.
And Mr. Wadier?
I had a question about the RR approved changes to the master maintenance mechanic wage.
Would you like to pull it for that question?
I just had a slight change for policy 3231.
Mr. Wadier, can you repeat the policy number that you'd like to pull? Can you repeat the policy number you would like to pull from consent?
It's
Yeah.
not a policy, it's item number RR.
Okay,
Dr. Worley,
yes.
I believe we need a motion and a second and a vote to
For
move
each
those
of
items
these.
off of consent.
Need the motion, I don't know.
So-
Policy, did you?
Yeah, so. I need the
3310.
motion. So it's 3310.
Mhm.
The contract, master maintenance mechanic wage schedule contract. And policy 3231. I think it could just be right here, it says. I could just read it. Isn't that what, are you asking for me just, I was just gonna proceed with what it says next.
Yes, that language can be read and then we'll.
That's what I was gonna do, yeah, okay. Thank you, Phyllis. And you want me to do those one at a time?
All three can be on
Okay,
the same.
just want to make
motion.
sure, okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Bauer has requested that policy 3310 be removed for further discussion, for separate discussion and action. And Mr. Wadier has requested that the changes to the master maintenance mechanic wage schedule item be removed for further discussion and action. And Ms. Heimer Roland has requested that policy 3231 be removed for separate discussion and action. Are there any objections? So now I would move to Liz, if you want to, or I can just read it. It's recommended, it's recommended the school board approve the remainder of the consent agenda. Liz seconds. Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Ms. Buck. Yes. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Mr. Wadier.
Yes.
And the remainder of the consent agenda passes. Okay, so we want to put then these items, we go to those next. Okay, in the order. Okay. Yes. We are going to move then. I just want everyone who's in the room to be able to follow. We're going to then go to policy 3310.
Absolutely. Looking at 3310, the spirit of that is to provide guidelines on what employees should and should engage in and what they should avoid, particularly as it addresses the school district. There is one phrase that I think, and I agree in general with everything that is on there. There is one phrase in there that is in B that I would suggest be stricken, and I can make a motion to that extent. It currently reads, refrain from expressions that would disrupt harmony among coworkers or interfere with the maintenance of discipline by school officials. I would then motion to eliminate the words disrupt harmony among coworkers, or making B now read refrain from expressions that would interfere with the maintenance of discipline by school officials. Should I have?
Can you read that one more time?
Yes. We should eliminate the phrase disrupt harmony among coworkers, or, which would make B now state refrain from expressions that would interfere with the maintenance of discipline by school officials. And I can provide my thoughts behind that.
Yeah, please do. And then we'll ask Ms. Zelazowski, who's proposed these to the policy committee, if she has things she wants to add.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And anyone else?
The concern is that disrupt harmony among coworkers is far too broad and not well defined in any sort of, at least as far as I can find, any sort of actual, it doesn't have a true definition, which makes it very wishy-washy and not suitable, in my opinion, for a policy. I think it'll get us in more trouble than it is worth.
Okay. Zelazowski, would you like to?
Yes, can you hear me? So that particular policy language is not new to the policy. It has been part of that policy since prior to my arrival. I believe that the intent of the language is to use a positive way to describe avoiding conflict among employees. I think that is an important message to uphold within the policy as the maintenance of discipline by school officials. I would say that as we're addressing employee matters, discipline is not always something that rises to a level of potential conflict. But if I would be happy to go ahead and take this back to committee to go ahead and recommend something that is not so broad and has more context to it.
Yeah, that would be much appreciated.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Just for those who are newer to the process, this is a second read, but we do not have to take action on a second read. And in a situation where there is some language like this raised up, typically what will happen is it will go back to the policy committee to come back to us then the next time that it fits on the agenda to with language that merges the what's been raised by the school board members, along with what the administration recommends from the perspective of, in this case, human resources. Are there any other comments on this policy that people wanted to make, just so we would do all of those questions at the same time? Hearing none, then I would ask that the policy committee find a time to put this on an agenda in an upcoming meeting and work with Ms. Zelzowski. Thank you, Mr. Bauer, for raising up your concern.
Do you need a motion at all to, or does it just go back to committee?
No.
No, okay.
No, so we would only need if we were going to take action. So yeah, but it's a good question. Thank you. Okay. Let's move to RR on the agenda, which is the expression of the contract on maintenance. Mr. Wadier, could you go ahead and explain what your questions are so we see what kind of discussion we need to have?
Sure. I'm just looking for a clarification as the way it read. It was a little confusing to me.
Sure.
I have no issue with the escalation of the wage scale I have to tally. Is this a full-time hire that we are talking about indefinitely, or is this something that is specifically for the referendum work and or how? It's not like immediately clear to me in looking at this. This is a position we're currently contracting just to get the minimum, and we're looking to hire someone full-time, or like what the end goal is.
You want to take this? Sure. Sounds good. Okay.
Thank you for the question. So this position is vacant due to a retirement almost a year ago. And we've had this position posted since July of 2024 and had been unable to fill it. The contract was to go ahead and provide us some support during this school year. But it has been a long time permanent position the organization has maintained, which is not reliant on referendum work to keep this person busy and to keep moving forward in the organization.
In this position, I would assume then has been and would continue to be part of the budget.
The FTE is included in our budget? Yes.
Okay, so I think that gives me the clarifications I need. I don't have any problem,
thank you.
but I just wanted to know.
So it's coming back because we need to upgrade the wage.
Our wage was not competitive.
Right.
Yep.
Any other, would you like to offer a motion?
I'd like to offer a motion to vote on item.
Pass. I recommend that we pass the
Recommend that we pass.
master maintenance
Our
mechanic.
master maintenance agreement.
Goes to Chris Bauer. Thank you. Ms. Zelzowski, could you call the roll? Sorry. I'll get through this yet this evening. Everyone, this is my first school board meeting, so I feel a little bit like it's an exciting one to be part of too. This summer, sorry about that. Please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski? Yes. Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Ms. Bach? Yes. Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland? Yes. Dr. Worley?
Yes,
Mr. Wadier?
Yes.
and the motion passes. And thank you for the questions. We will now move to policy 3231. Ms. Heimer Roland, could you brief us on what you'd like to talk about?
Something really simple. In
3213, did I say that backwards? Oh, there it is. Outside activities of staff.
yes, so I know we're moving to just consistency with language in the policies. Under research and publishing, A, it says professional staff members are encouraged. We've just been removing professional in front of the board staff in all our policies. I would just make a motion to remove the word professional in the research and publishing item A.
Ms. Olzowski, do you concur?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that close reading and noticing what's gone before many people's eyes. Any other board members have comments or questions about this one? Then I would suggest that we go ahead and take action on this one as amended, if that's okay. So I need a motion. Liz, I don't know if you would like to do that.
I move to remove the word professional under research and publications, item A, in policy number 3231.
So we'll pass. First, we have to do the amendment, and then we can do the motion on the passing it. So we have a second on that proposed amendment. Thank you. Ms. Summers, could you call the roll?
Ms. Brzezinski? Yes. Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Ms. Bach? Yes. Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland?
Yes.
Dr. Worley?
Yes.
Mr. Wadier?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Now I need a motion to propose to pass this policy as it's been amended.
I move to pass policy 3231 as amended.
Could I have a second? Phil, thank you. Ms. Summers, could you call the roll?
Ms. Brzezinski? Yes. Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Ms. Bach? Yes. Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland?
Yes.
Dr. Worley?
Yes.
Mr. Wadier?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on. Long list. We'll move on to number 4, strategic goal 6, operations.
Everyone, I'll be up here for 2 reports tonight, and then I'll invite Kevin up for roofing, and I'll talk briefly about food service. But the primary 2 reports are the April financials, thanks, Corey, and preliminary budget. So the first topic is our April financials. This is probably going to be like a broken record for many of us. Not much change from really any of the last, say, 8 to 10 months. We're trending about the same way on revenues and expenses as we have really since about November or December. I guess the really good news about that is we can tell the software is working. We shouldn't see big variances month to month. That would be more alarming in terms of are we making good predictions than seeing a steady trend. So we're fairly confident where we're going to end the year. I've talked at length about our revenues being basically on target, but our expenses, in particular in the area of purchase services, being the areas of concern, and that's due to really 3 areas: legal fees, emergency maintenance to buildings, and subcosts, which subcosts have gotten in line, especially transportation is the third. All things that we right-sized for next year's budget, but I'll talk about that in the next presentation. One thing that stood out this month that I wanted to highlight for the board is, let me find the right slide. On this slide, we can see the variance change in benefits. So that would be let's see, do I have if you can see my mouse here, the projection for benefits last month was that we would finish the year about 160,000 to the good. This month's projection is 1.1 million. I don't want anyone thinking we're actually going to have that positive variance. We've changed how we're paying for our health insurance. So we used to double up our payments in April and May. because of our cycle with how teachers are paid, we've now made those even payments over all 12 months. So we're going to see a positive variance the next 2 months, and then it will settle back. I think we're going to end up with that small variance, but I didn't want anyone getting overly excited about a $1 million positive variance. That concludes the report for April.
Thank you. This is an opportunity for board members who might have questions on this report. Please just raise your hand and then, yes, Ms. Burns.
Can you just explain that one more time about why that number is so big?
The health insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our practice for who knows, maybe decades for all I know, it has been to because of how we accrue payroll for teachers. So teachers get paid for 12 months of work, but state law requires that that their work for this school year all be paid by June 30th. So their pay and their benefits. Yet so my dad was a teacher, and say back in the olden days, they would get one check on their last payroll that was paid for like 3 months of summer, and then the teachers would put that in their bank account and kind of make sure they didn't overspend it. At least a couple decades ago, that practice generally changed to probably when ACHs came out, that we could pay an ACH to teachers on a regularly scheduled payroll date. So they weren't receiving a big check. We weren't sending a big check. But that has then, part of that was also accruing for benefits. So for some reason, our practice had been to double up benefit payments the last 2 months of the year and not take any benefit payments 2 months later in the year. So now we've just evened that out.
I just want to point out for the public, everything you've shown us, Mr. Eckert, has been great, but especially in that top, if we hadn't had this software last year, we'd be seeing what looked like a much larger in the red there with the benefits as compared to what we're seeing this year. So it gives us a lot of clarity, a lot of transparency, and actually knowing what we're seeing, whether we had going from the 2 payments to over a 12-month period, that still paints a much better picture.
Correct. Thanks.
I also want to highlight that for everyone to understand, and those who may be here for the first time or seeing us for the first time, that we are working in a budget that was formed before you were here, but you've been helping us this year to really be aware with the software, be aware of where we are, where we need to budget better going forward. So thank you for pointing that out as you gave the presentation, because I think it helps all of us to better understand the later presentation that's coming about the budget.
My anticipation next year would be that we would not see some of these large variances, because what that would indicate is we're budgeting correctly. The only time we should see a large variance like that would be if I come to the board and I say, hey, we have this emergency. I want to make you aware that this roof fell in and it couldn't be budgeted for. So now we want the board to approve a project and expect a variance.
Thank you. Thanks for that example. Any other board members, questions about this? Thanks for all the effort you put into preparing the reports and videos ahead of time as well. We can move on to your next item.
That is a segue into the 25-26 preliminary budget. So just quickly to kind of ground us just in timing, the board has had a couple like super high level looks at budget projections. So I guess going back a few months, you could say the very first look you had at a 25-26 budget was when we first presented a 5-year projection. So as time goes by, we narrow down those kind of dependent variables to be able to present at now our first real look at a budget. Then the step after this will be our budget hearing at the end of July, and the board will then adopt a we call original or preliminary budget for the 25-26 school year immediately following the budget hearing.
Then in October, once we have our student count happens in September, our state certifies our state aid in October, and the board certifies the tax levy after we get our state aid. The board will then approve a final budget in October. Then, if there's any budget amendments needed during the year, we did that, for instance, this year, there's the potential that the board would approve a budget amendment. That's only if needed. So those would be the next big milestones. So really, you probably won't hear a whole lot more about the 25-26 budget between now and the budget hearing, unless the state budget, unless something happens in Madison, unless the board were to approve new positions, unless something material happened with the assumptions that we're working through. So I really want to ground us in some of the great things we've been able to do with this budget. And I remember at my interview, one of the things I said is we can do anything we want, we just can't do everything. And so I think sometimes we need to, it's helpful to look back on what are some of the things we can do, because we often, all of us in school districts, maybe at any job, certainly at home too, hear about all the things that aren't happening. And sometimes it's good to think about the things that are happening. So our residents' approval of our November referendum affirms and has allowed us to keep our low class sizes, neighborhood elementary schools, competitive compensation, certainly more so than it was several years ago. Our student support services, so people for student supports, mental health services, those FTEs have gone up dramatically. We've been able to keep all of them. Our teacher professional development, both people that provide that and the services that go along with it, has been a major investment for the district. And next year, we'll have a balanced budget with a surplus designated for fund balance. That's the first time in 3 years that we'll have that. So it's a lot to celebrate. It hasn't been easy getting here, I'll say that. And it doesn't provide for everything that everybody would want. But I think these 6 bullet points are some pretty good celebrations for us. So so here's our major budget assumptions. First is that our enrollment and FTE, so enrollment and staff FTE, come September, will match the approved staffing plan. I mean, that is the major driver, the number of people that we have. So if that changes significantly, that is going to change the budget. And I'd be coming back to the board saying, hey, we have this many more people or this many fewer people, and here's how it impacts the budget. The current state law for revenue cap, this is much less of a speculation than it was for most of my career because of the governor's line item veto authority, the roughly $350 increase per student each year has been written into law for the next, 400 years or something. So absent maybe a Supreme Court ruling or something at the state, we're more certain of that dollar amount than we ever have been. We're under this budget, we are assuming current state law for special education. So generally what I like to do with budgets is assume current state law and not speculate on what could go better or worse. I've got my fingers crossed that things get a little better with special education, but for the time being, we're budgeting the normal special education reimbursement. That is about 29% for us. If you hear that it's 33% or something like that, which is kind of common across the state, is what people talk about. That's because it's what the DPI calls a some certain amount. So it's a dollar amount written into the budget of the state budget that they think will cover 1/3 of costs. But once they hit that some certain dollar amount, it doesn't increase. So it never ends up being about 33%. It's always around 29%. It also assumes, and as much as we have more certainty about current state law for revenue cap, this is probably the most uncertain I've been about federal grants. So we have more certainty on one side, and I think a little less certainty on another side. Now, I guess if there is good news about federal grants, because of our demographics and population, we do not get much federal funding. Generally, districts with more poverty get the most federal funding. So we don't have as much risk there as many districts in the state that are receiving, a greater portion of their income from federal grants. By and large, our largest new investment every year is teacher compensation. And what we've budgeted for is a 3.6% pay increase, which equates to about 2.6 million new dollars over last year's cost.
Without the referendum, what would that number be?
If the referendum didn't pass, we would have about 150 fewer people, and I'd be recommending a salary freeze. Here's a real high-level overview of our operating funds, our revenues, expenses, and you can see the bottom line there. And this is budgeted right now as a surplus. And you can see the change year over year. Again, our revenues are up about $17 million. 16.1 million of that is the referendum. So then roughly 900,000 in combined money from the state and revenue cap money. And then expenditures only going up 4.7 million. Again, 2.6 of that is teacher compensation, leaving roughly 2.7 million for other employee compensation, and frankly, to right size a lot of things in the budget that we know needed to be. Okay, I also needed, just to kind of ground myself, I wanted to go back and look at the most significant investments that the district has made since 2021. And I think this is just something that's good to do every few years to see, A, are we aligned with our strategic plan? Are we putting our money where we said we were going to? Eventually we should start looking at what outcomes are we getting. I know that when we've had the Department of Student Supports or Department of Academic Performance, they have talked at length about some of the celebrations they've had. And a lot of those things are due to the investment put into these areas. So I'm just going to kind of read through these. I know everyone can read it, but for sake of the presentation, our largest investments are in student supports. So that is staff directly focused on social emotional health, social work. It includes our psychologists and deans. That annual budget increased from $77,000 in 2021 to $1.1 million currently. So significant investment. Staff development. That includes staff development for teachers, so programming for teachers, as well as the staff dedicated to improving student instruction. So we added quite a few staff that their sole focus is within the Department of Academic Performance and improving instruction in the classroom. That budget has gone from $3.5 million to $10.1 million. So another significant investment. Special education staff has gone up about 22 FTE. Now that's a combination of teachers and educational assistants, but significantly more support for special education. Our teacher salaries, this will be the fourth year in a row that our teachers receive raises above neighboring districts. Now, I'm anticipating ours will be above neighboring districts because most districts are offering the CPI or less. So, and what we've budgeted is more than that. Prep time for elementary teachers. Sometimes this gets forgotten. And I had to kind of dig into the budget to find out what this was. When I was looking at staffing changes since 2021, and I saw that we had jumped in number of art teachers. And so Dr. Means and Sarah were able to kind of fill me in on the background of that. Is the reason for that was we had added art teachers or specials teachers, I would call them, to provide right, so the kids have somewhere to go, which would give our elementary teachers more prep time. So that's an investment in time for teachers and good for students. And the other big areas are retiree health insurance. So I know of a few years ago when the new salary schedule plan was presented to the board, that is the one thing I found there was an appendix with recommendations that the board considered going forward. One of those items was health insurance premium for employees, for instance. So the board executed on that. One item that hasn't been executed on is reviewing what our opportunities are with retiree health insurance. And you can see that that is the budget there is about $1.1 million more than it was 4 years ago. And that continues to increase. So again, that's for people that have worked here long enough that they qualify for health insurance paid upon their retirement. Again, our largest new investment this year and every year is pay increases for teachers. And here's our other investments. I mentioned compensation increases for other staff. So that's our support staff, select staff, and administration. Right sizing budgets. The main areas are special ed transportation. So we've talked about how that's a variance this year. I don't want that to always, I mean, I guess I could tell you, hey, we're not going to increase that budget. And then throughout the year say, hey, bad news, we overspent. But we know what we're going to spend, so let's budget that way. Emergency facility repairs. We are well over budget there this year. Honestly, I don't know if I can get that one right sized. We have so much deferred maintenance. If we look back at our most significant investments since 2021, there is nothing on here about facilities. So when we talk about what choices have we made, or non-choices, we've been able to do a lot of things, but we haven't corrected our facility concerns. So we have increased that budget, but we don't know what emergencies there's going to be. And in a district of our size with RH buildings, there is more than other districts with the same number of students with newer buildings, frankly. Title I, we've right-sized for some reason. Revenue had been over budgeted for several years, so we fixed that. We've now budgeted for, so we've talked about substitute teachers and the fill rate. So from a budget standpoint, several years ago when we couldn't fill subs, we saved money. Now we have subs in the classroom, so that's good for students. It seems like that trend is now going to continue. We're kind of over that COVID, can't find substitutes, a challenge we had. So we are now budgeting next year as if we're going to keep our fill rate where it is. Legal expenses, short-term borrowing is a significant cost, and it's significant in two ways. One, we don't have the fund balance sitting in the bank that we used to have, right? So the revenue that we would have earned on money sitting in the bank is gone. And on top of that, we have to now borrow money. So we're losing revenue and we're gaining an expense. That's about $1 million net that we just have to come up with. Our school leadership teams, we've got that budgeted correctly now. There was some confusion about who was going to be paying for that. So now we know who's paying for it to support that.
School leadership team.
You might be able to explain it better than I.
School leadership teams are teams that we've created at each of the school buildings to allow teacher voice to be part of the development of the school growth plans for schools.
I would not have, I knew kind of what it was, but I would not be able to explain it that well. And then finally, our external communications is another area that purposefully we've been trying to be more transparent and communicate more, but we've continued to overspend that budget. Given where we want to be with communication and transparency, working with Ms. Tuttle to align that budget with what her priorities are. And so that's all things we were already doing and just had to right size. So nothing new. We just have 2 new initiatives for next year. That's our senior tax relief program. So that is an opportunity again for senior citizens in the community to spend time, I'll call it volunteering in our schools. In return for that volunteering, we give them pay that they can then use to offset their increased taxes. So that's something we talked more at length about during the referendum, but we have budgeted for that. And we've budgeted for the expenses that are going to go with our secondary school committee. So things like the facilitator, things like a bus to take the committee to look at other facilities. I'm always in favor of if we know we're doing something, let's budget for it, so we're not wondering later how are we going to pay for it. And then this hasn't been without our challenges, right? So, and there's a few remaining unknowns. So a challenge has been open enrollment and tuition waiver drawdown, right? And we have fewer students. And then the associated staffing reductions, right? When you lose students, the staffing reductions don't necessarily come one-to-one with where we're losing students and then rejuggling staff. So that was, I know, a really significant challenge for Sarah, our principals, to get our students the best support. The one big remaining unknown on the revenue side is you might, for board members that were on the board, you might remember we received about a $1.4 million kind of unexpected revenue as part of a property tax payment from the state. That it's in current state law. So I have budgeted going forward, but I also have my fingers crossed that that is not going to change. But I want to make you aware of that. The real, on the expense side, the biggest challenge that we have is, I mentioned, I can't get our repairs and emergency maintenance right-sized. I'm not even sure what dollar amount that would be. So that is a concern, and something I'm going to talk to the finance committee about a little bit. How do we kind of reconcile that, and hopefully that committee will have some ideas to bring to the board as a whole. I just want to remind us that this budget, as well as the referendum, doesn't really provide any what I would call upgrades to classrooms, right? So it's not, there's not a budget to increase classroom size or tear down some walls. I'm facing an issue right now with a classroom at East High. We've got floor tiles coming up, issues with air quality, and nothing that is a health concern. It certainly is probably uncomfortable, but kind of battling with that. Do we throw good money after bad? Do we repair the tiles one at a time? Do Kevin and I come to the board and say, hey, there's no budget for this, but what do you want us to do? So there's a lot of examples out there like that. And then the other challenge we have that I hopefully I've talked about, well, I know I've talked about, but hopefully it's made sense, is with the number of elementary buildings we have and the small school size and small number of sections per school, from a pure efficiency standpoint, that is an inefficient way to run a school district. I know we're not about widgets and efficiency, but it does limit our flexibility in being able to shift staff, for instance. So that it's just a constraint we have that we have to live within. So this is going to look a lot like the report you get every month. You can see the column on the far right is our budget. And then all the columns to the left of that are historical actuals. And just at a high level, you can see our total revenues, total expenses broken down in a couple areas, and then the surplus or deficit and beginning and fund balance each of those years. So you can see, I'm just going to go right down to the ending fund balance. We're projected to finish the year, this year, 24-25, with about a $10 million fund balance. And then you can see we're budgeted to put about 1.3 million back into fund balance. So we'd be increasing that to say roughly 11.5 million. For those of us that like pictures of where we get our money and where it goes, this is just a pie chart of where the money's coming from. In our district, the largest piece is local property taxes. That's going to be the blue, and then state aid or state sources is the orange. And here's this is just a longitudinal picture, again, of revenues. You can see The proportions don't change very much, except if you look at the federal revenue, that's sort of a maroon purple color. You can see the years where there was significant dollars there. That's ESSER money. And that is the money that's dried up. One of the reasons that we're so thankful for the referendum is some of the positions that we added, we used ESSER money for. So as that money went away, had the referendum not passed, there would have not been dollars available to fund those positions. Here's again a pie chart of our expenses. Salaries and benefits are the blue and orange, so by far the vast majority of our expenses, roughly 11% of everything else, or is everything else. And here's a longitudinal look at those, and we can see, really, you can, to me, the thing that stands out is the blue bar on the bottom is our salaries. And the significant, I mean, our total salary budget in 2022, $46 million. So significant investment in both people and salary increases. And then here's a picture of our fund balance, history, and budget. I should have had a slide that said questions, I guess.
Yes, now we turn to, thank you, Mr. Ecker, for both a informative and visually captivating presentation too. I really appreciate the colors. They do help make
Thank
sense
you.
of the different bars and what they stand for.
Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, I would turn to some time for our board members. Ms. Bach, go ahead.
I am just wondering about the 1.4 million property tax payment and why we're not sure if we're going to get that.
So it was written, last year was the first year we got it. And my peers and I were not budgeting for it because we weren't convinced we were going to get it. The governor, I don't know if it was via line item veto or if it was part of the approved budget, shifted money outside of the revenue cap, which is good for school districts like us because in the past, that money had just been included in the revenue cap. So it would have been pure property tax relief. And it moved outside the revenue cap to make it essentially extra money. It's not property taxes to our citizens. In large part, businesses receive kind of property tax rebates for some of the equipment they have, some of the land that they have. And it's some kind of calculation the state uses on business and flows the money to us. We're business heavy, so we're one of the larger, for a district with our square mileage, it's a fairly large amount, like Madison or Milwaukee or something much bigger. But given our constraints geographically, it's a healthy amount. There's just maybe myself and my peers are just conservative by nature. So when I survey my peers in other districts, about half of them are budgeting for it next year and half aren't. Again, my policy has been to budget for state law. Those that are even more conservative than me are holding in their back pocket as if it may not come.
Other questions? Comments? Go ahead, Ms. Hammerald.
To clarify, with that 1.4 million, that would require, so the only way we would not get that is if there was a change in state law through the budgeting, assuming that would happen through the budgeting process for the
Correct.
from the state.
Correct.
I wasn't on the board when the retiree health insurance benefit was voted on. Can you tell us a little bit more about how much that is and what that is?
I doubt anyone was here when it was voted on because that's been probably decades. In fact, in Wisconsin, one of the main attractions for teachers for decades was post-retirement health insurance. When Act 10 went away, that caused a lot of districts to change health insurance benefits. Many moved from a defined benefit to a defined contribution. What I was getting at is when the board approved the new salary schedule, or there was no salary schedule before, so I guess it was new and a salary schedule. That would have been Mr. Dixon that worked with Sarah and I think Dr. Means on developing that. And there was a list of recommendations that said to make this sustainable over time, the board will need to consider these other things as well. And one of those things was employee contribution to health insurance, for instance. And so the board acted on that. When I reviewed that list, the one thing that hasn't been acted on, but there hasn't been any recommendation either, so nothing has been brought forward, it's just kind of dangling out there, is reviewing whether this is still appropriate or not for our district.
We currently provide our retirees with a health benefit, or what is the benefit we offer them?
Do you have it memorized, Sarah?
Well, not quite memorized, but based on hire date at the age of either 55 or 57 with between 15 and 25 years of service, employees can get a certain number of months of health insurance paid for either fully or at a percentage of premium rate defined in the policy, in essence. So we are, it is a very valuable benefit that our employees would say that many of them stuck it out through the years of low salaries to go ahead and earn. And so we heard very strongly when I came into the district in 2022 that we should not change that benefit for existing employees. And I continue to go ahead and let employees know that we will need to go ahead and make a change for employees going forward. And that should become an increasing priority for us. And we also know that new employees coming into the field aren't going to want the same type of benefit that our veteran employees have wanted in the past. New employees into the workforce will have probably multiple careers and be looking for different things. Generally speaking, that's not to say all. So that the message that we have shared is that the benefit will not change for existing staff members, and we have to change it for the future.
And this, I think maybe Dr. Means or Sarah can answer. The significant increase in staff development. So that was 3.5 million and up to 10.1 million. Who is that group of staff primarily?
So that's the Department of Academic Performance.
Okay.
And that would be a combination of people, instructional materials,
Where our updated curriculum included in that?
not new ones, not referendum approved ones.
Right, ones that we've approved in the last 2 years. That is included in that dollar amount.
So like
Okay.
English language arts
Got
and
it.
all the training that comes along with the creation of curriculum coordinators. The expansion of the academic specialists that we now have in our schools. Please note, I did not mention instructional coaches because that FTE was always within the district.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Will there be any changes to I guess I'm looking at the prep time for elementary teachers there. Doesn't seem significant as related to other items that approximately 400,000 per year investment in there. Obviously, we're trying to give teachers and educators that time back there to, whether it's additional arts teachers. Are there other ways we're looking at that? I don't know what those ways are, but is it only art? Are there, since we're going with Discovery Lab and these other things, will be other opportunities in addition to art for those types of specials?
So the Discovery Lab is offset by what we offer in Spanish. So that's just an offsetting. So that FTE, we had 6.0 FTE dedicated to Spanish. Elementary Spanish is now dedicated to Discovery. I appreciate Mr. Ecker highlighting the fact that we did make the cut of $400,000. We made an internal cut in other areas of the budget to increase preparation time for teachers at the elementary school level, which we call PACE. PACE stands for prepare, align, collaborate, and engage. We created that time so our teachers can either work with themselves as a teacher team or work with instructional coaches to ensure that the instruction that they're planning is responsive to the needs of students. So that was an investment that our principals felt that we needed to provide when we looked at the preparation time that elementary school teachers had in comparison to school and high school. It was not comparable.
Any others?
I do have one.
Yeah, please do.
Excuse me. We are in this budget, we are assuming what 1.1 million going back into the fund balance on an annual basis, or 1.3 million. That goal is to prevent or have enough in the fund balance in order to not have to short-term borrow, correct?
There's not a board policy about that, but
No,
the
but
board has stated that's the goal.
When are we scheduled, if we continue this on year after year, when are we going to get out of the need to have to short-term borrow?
If we do $1 million a year, 16 or 17 years.
And then, thank you for that. It's, the next question that I would have would be, this budget that you're putting together is huge. It's over $100 million. How complicated is it? And how did you come up with right sizing all of these things? What was that process behind the scenes?
May I start? There's 13,000 line items in our budget. Mr. Ecker and his director of finance went through each one of the 13,000 line items twice to get a sense of what we had in our budget and what we did not have in our budget. So that was the start of it. He then had conversations with each of the leaders of a budget, be it a district level administrator or a school principal. That's the only way you can get a handle on a budget the size and the scope of our budget.
That is what I did. The first budget you build anywhere is always going to be the hardest. It's always easier looking at your own work backwards than it is someone else's. It is a lot of line items. Now, I will say the things that need right sizing do stand out like a sore thumb. So I wouldn't have wanted to do it like probably was done 40 years ago on ledger paper. But with my team and frankly Excel and some other tools, we can identify pretty quickly where we need to fix things and what things we don't have to worry about.
And the board should just recognize that while this is a balanced budget, again, assuming a 29% reimbursement rate for special education, there are still pressures being applied to us around our budget. So there will be individuals who will say compensation is not enough. Well, if it's not enough, then that $1.3 million that has been identified for fund balance replenishment, maybe you don't put it back in. While the board made that commitment, what Mr. Ecker said is the only way that this budget remains balanced is if we continue to demonstrate discipline around it. So if we succumb to some of the pressures that are coming at us in regards to this budget, just know that that one line item that you have, I guess there's really two pathways of more revenue. One is hoping that the state provides greater reimbursement for special education, or two, you have identified that line item for replenishing your fund balance.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember that it wasn't just the short-term borrowing, but we also heard from our finance advisor, or was it our auditor, that our rating, an important part of our rating, was this commitment to replenishing the fund balance. I just want newer board members to know that piece as
Yeah,
well.
we had a lengthy call with Moody's in February. We are the second highest rated category in Moody's. A lot of that call focused on what has happened to our fund balance and what's the plan going forward. I was pleasantly surprised that they affirmed our rating. I really thought that we would be knocked down a notch, and in large part, their response was, "We like it that you have a plan, and we like it that the board has affirmed they want to rebuild the fund balance. We still have 45 million more to borrow, right? We borrowed about 15 million. Well, we borrowed exactly 15 million of the 60 million referendum. We've got another 45 million to borrow for that. There'll be another Moody's call. And provided that we're hitting our targets, I assume they'll affirm again. But if our direction changes, I would anticipate that we would lose that rating.
In that sense, Mr. Eckert, is there any certain scenario or circumstance following all these things, doing the right things, that our rating would improve to that highest level?
I don't think so, because in large part that there's only like maybe 5 districts or 7 districts in the state at the absolute highest level, and it's because their property wealth is just so high. Our financials with our fund balance were about as good as they could be, and I don't think that we would ever have the development here to get us to that next phase. So it's much easier to go down for us.
I would also add to the question about how you decide on the right size, that many of the items on the list we've been watching all year. And you've been coming to us and telling us that it was under budgeted and expecting that we were going to need to watch that line very carefully. So this is an attempt to more carefully budget and be more transparent about what the needs are. And there's also been some sacrifices and cuts built into this. I don't know, Dr. Means, if you would want to say anything about your strategic leadership on that part.
We've made quite a few reductions. Ms. Owazowski ensured that we offset the reduction in open enrollment revenue, because again, the board has implemented the strategic vision that you voted on October 28th. That was affirmed through a community survey, that we would start to strategically apply open enrollment in the district, but that also meant that we had a reduction in revenue. And we reduced our staff accordingly to match it. So that has been implemented.
Thank you. And not only was it a community driven request, we also were looking financially at some of the risks that open enrollment pose for us should the cost of educating students continue to rise faster than the state reimbursement for taking open enrollment students. I don't want that to be lost either. Once you take an open enrollment student, we keep them. And so it's a long journey to changing those numbers and that percentage in the district. And so this was a conversation for almost this time around 2 years, I think, in finance about how to approach and when to approach open enrollment, because we could see that there were some potential challenges down the road. So it was community driven, but it was also financial decision to plan as well as we could for our future. Any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Ecker, for all this work. We will look forward to seeing what updates you have on this after we get a little bit more news at the state level.
I think the next topic is I'm here for as well. So
yes. So please proceed to looking at the food service contract.
So in summary, the board approved a new 4-year food service contract last year with Sodexo. Per USDA guidelines, essentially the board, it just has to affirm that every year. And the dollar or the increase that Sodexo can pass along to us is limited by federal law. So the proposal before you is we're just telling you, hey, this is the limit they have. We already have the contract. We have a really good food service director. His name is Robert. He's got some good things going, in particular our secondary schools with some of the things he's added for choices for kids. And he's worked really closely with, I imagine it's the principals or maybe an associate principal. But I've been pretty pleased with his imagination and some of the things that he's done. Now, I'll say I've worked with a lot of food service companies, some external, some internal, and there's always going to be some kind of complaint about some menu item is on too often or not often enough, or my kids personally would complain about the wheat crust on the pizza. Why wasn't it white crust? There's always going to be some kind of complaints about food service, but overall, I think ours is performing very well. It's self-funded, so it pays for itself via federal money and lunch costs. And I also need to mention that we supply breakfast for, hundreds of students every day as well.
And when will this come up for a vote?
This is just discussion or information
Right.
tonight, action at the next board meeting.
Okay, I just want people to be clear. So any questions or comments at this time?
Have we got any feedback from the students about the quality of the food since we've had the change here in this little bit of time?
Students?
He did say that he meets with the students when he presented to the finance committee probably 6 months ago. And he does actually work pretty closely. He works really closely with the students at Tosa East to build up their Raider room. And I had asked him if he could work with the principal over at West to see what they can create over there. So I do think he's getting lots of feedback from students.
Mr. Morris, were you trying to tee up our students that are here?
I just think about that was the very first thing that when I was coming onto the board that was brought to me in many emails and community conversations from students and parents that had multiple kids. The quality of the food was like priority number one. So I was like, I'll continue to ask about those things.
So the reviews at my house are really positive. And I just want to say that on the record. And I know that they work hard to also build relationships with the kids, the company, the people working there. So we appreciate that. Sometimes they run out of the best options though before the later lunches, and that's the big complaint.
Anything else? Okay, well, please review that as needed and plan for that conversation or vote at the next action item at the next meeting.
I did
Yes.
one quick question on there. You said that the increase is limited by federal, is a federal limit at 3%. Is there any wiggle room there? Like if we said, 3% is good, but what about 2.25%? Is there any pushback there?
We can negotiate with them. To the law limits the amount they can increase to us. We still negotiate with them on what the final price will be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Eckert. We will move on to the next item, which is D, action to award the 2025 roofing remodels at Eisenhower and Roosevelt Elementary Schools to the recommended low bidder.
And I'm going to invite Kevin up here too.
Thank you.
But I'm going to kind of set this up because I don't anticipate that we'll be doing this with every project of the referendum. I'm going to put on our finance committee a discussion about how do we, right now there's board policy on how the board approves major expenditures. There's going to be a lot of major expenditures with the referendum. And so I want to have a conversation with the committee about how do we streamline that so we're getting the projects done in the right time frame and still get that board approval we need. We haven't had that conversation yet, so I asked Kevin to put this on the agenda so that the board could so we could follow policy with this particular item.
That makes sense. Thank you.
It is recommended that the school board award the 2025 roofing remodels at Eisenhower and Roosevelt Elementary Schools to the recommended low bidder, and I so move.
May I have a second? Mr. Bauer, thank you for the second.
Did you?
Comment or conversation? Could you tell us, Kevin? Oh, I think we're getting the presentation up.
It's the full, you know, where it is. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Let me pull up. Four. Well, thank you.
I see.
And I also have an aerial photo, and it best describes what we're bidding out. Okay, so the recommendation letter from ECS Midwest. ECS is a building envelope consultant the district has worked with for several years. And as Scott mentioned, the work in this bid tabulation, as shown in the second page, is for work identified in the 2024 referendum, particularly for Eisenhower Elementary and Roosevelt. All the elementary schools has some extent of building envelope repairs. But for the summer of 25, we're looking at accomplishing the work at Eisenhower and Roosevelt. So the bid went out to 4 qualified bidders, as the recommendation letter states. And Nate Appleton is the consultant we partner with. He's recommending, and I recommend, that we go with Schranz for both contracts as the qualified low bidder. As I said, the work is identified in the referendum. And as you look at the budget laid out in the bottom of the spreadsheet, we're showing the cost for Schranz per their bid. We also have some costs for Holton Brothers for some masonry repairs at Roosevelt that are aligned to this roofing. ECS, their fee is listed. And then we're going to hold a contingency of 10% for this budget, for a total of just over 1.6 million. Now, in the referendum, in the budget identified line item for these particular projects, the budget held just over $1.7 million. So the good news is we're under budget with a healthy contingency. The goal is that we don't have to use the contingency, and then that money can be returned back to the overall budget for all the schools involved in the referendum plan. The photo I attached. Eisenhower, as many of you can notice, it's the areas of roofing on the left side here that kind of make this configuration. And then for Roosevelt, a majority of the roof section on the top elevation here, and then there's a section in the foreground on a lower elevation right there. You can even see some of the original to the construction of that building, the ventilation hoods that are up there, that back in the day in the 20s when they made these, there was a lot of gravity force ventilation that way, the hot air would rise to the building and escape out the roof. Those are no longer in use, but this roofing project will abandon those in place and make for a better finished product. The recommendation or the urgency to have full action tonight, as Schranz has listed in their bid submittal, they're ready to begin work on June 16th. And given their schedule, procurement of materials and everything else in the window we have in the summer to get the work done, that's why we're asking for the approval in this first presentation.
Thank you. Just for everyone, the public and board members, especially newer ones, can you just go over what a business like ECS does and why the school district turns to them to help us get the best?
Thank you for mentioning. I did forget to mention earlier, this project, I will manage in the partnership with ECS. So we pulled this out of the referendum work that PRA and VGS would have typically run. That saves the district some fees, I think. And the relationship we have with ECS is they've developed our building envelope plan, the long range plan, which is that information. That's what we use the information from to build the referendum scope of work as it relates to roofing. ECS has worked with the district, I think as far back as 2019 or 2020 at least. And Nate Appleton in particular worked for a different building envelope consultant firm prior to that, but they were working for the district. So Nate knows the district very well. And it's very common for districts to partner with an engineering firm that has this specialty in building envelope in nature. And that's where this relationship has really worked out well.
Thank you. And we'll just emphasize that it was a competitive bid process that they ran.
Correct.
Right. No, I know that, but
yeah.
I just want, there are
I'm
questions
sorry.
come up now and then from sources about that.
Thank
And
you
want to
for
make sure that you
having
are
me have more clarity.
right.
Yeah. So
we're aware.
The benefit to having a partner like ECS is they can help design the bid documents, help us lead the bid process, qualify the bids as they come in. And what that does is when we look at the lowest bid, we know that they've got everything covered because we have a partner like ECS working with us to know that we're going to get the best result for the best price. And there were 4 competitive bids.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. It's building envelope expertise is definitely sounds like it's really important to have in making this project not only come in under budget, but also be the quality that we want for the future.
Yeah, and I stress the word, thank you, that's very important. I stress the word building envelope because it's more than roofs, it's windows, it's masonry, it's doors. That all is what helps everybody do what they do in each building.
Thank you. Board members, comments or questions further? Go ahead, Mr. Morris.
So how many projects does ECS work on for us over the course of a year or a couple years? Is this like the one? So I'm just thinking about their consulting fee on there for this service for this project. Are there 3 or 4 more of those? And then 3 or 4 more fees associated with each of those?
This is the second project I worked on with them with. So about this time last year, I presented this same scenario to the board for roofing projects that were in the capital improvement plan, the Fund 41 plan. So for me, it's my second project with them.
Go ahead, Mr. Wadier.
Does this also the bid also include warranty as far as anything that would happen? We've had that happen in the past, and just want to make sure that that's stated that how long is our warranty period on the
the warranty is written into the bid document, and then upon the AIA contract that we develop with Schranz, I know we have a 20-year manufacturer warranty, and I believe we had written in a 5-year labor warranty that would go to the installer. Idea there is that the installer warrants their work on the installation for a period of 5 years. Beyond that 5 years, it's a manufacturer's warranty, and then you just need to have someone who's qualified to work on that product to come out, and then the manufacturer backs it up.
Any other comments or questions? Again, I would also just say that part of this timing, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we know we have the funding and we want to jump on the project as soon as possible after that funding becomes available to us, because you have a lot of projects coming in in your direction. Plus, these roads are in a great deal of need.
Correct. Ideally, this would have been brought to you a month ago for more review, but there are a lot of other projects going on with the referendum work. We're actually planning out the schematic design work for the entire 60 million that would take place over 3 years. And that's just more planning, schematic design, schematic budgeting, and so on. But there's a lot of effort going on in addition to this work.
Right. Mhm. Okay. So, hearing no other questions, we have the motion on the floor. We have the second. So, Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Ms. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Walland,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes,
Mr. Wadier.
Yes.
and the motion passes. Board members, I just want to consult. We've have a fair amount of agenda left, and if it's been 2 hours, if you need a short stretch break right now, or would you like to get one more item done and then
One more.
one more item done? Okay. Thank you. So we move to strategic goal number 1, academic performance, presentation of the potential AP African American Studies textbook.
Hello, everyone. Jessica Ebert, Director of Curriculum, and I'm here with Laura Fowle, Social Studies Curriculum Coordinator. And all of you received an executive summary that outlined the textbook, possible textbook adoption for the AP African American Studies course that was approved by the board in October of 2024. And we're here just to hear any questions that you might have about that executive summary, and know that this is just the opportunity to ask those questions. And then in 2 weeks, we will return, well, actually in June, because that's the next board meeting, return for approval of that text. So we'll open the floor for questions.
And just to tee it up too, this is a new course for next year.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I read that the textbook itself is currently, as of the 13th, you can come and hold it in your hand and look at it, or you can look at it through the online.
That's correct. We will have a copy of the text in the front area of Fisher, and anyone can step in and.
I just want to make sure people know that as well.
Thank you for identifying that.
Questions or comments?
Summary was
Apparently very effective executive summary. I wanted to highlight also, I was really struck by the decision-making choice. So for those community members who've not had a chance to read all of it, the decision-making choice, this textbook really stood out with its support that it would give to the teachers, and particularly in alignment with the requirements that are in place for this course. Compared to the other options, which also look good, I thought that really stood out as one of the key deciding factors. So hopefully board members will take a look at that, and feel free to also send questions in the interim until we come to the time to take action.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, it's a long wait for a very short presentation.
That's all right.
Shall we take an 8-minute stretch break? Okay. Please note that we will come back at 8:06 and resume our business. We have a number of items still to do. Thank you, Ms. Zelzowski. You may proceed with action to approve the final financial 2025-2026 final financial contract non-renewals.
My apologies.
It is recommended that the school board approve the 2025-26 final financial contract non-renewals, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Morris? Thank you.
This is the second step in our non-renewal process for teachers whose FTE is being reduced based on student registrations. It's a two-step process. Following our last meeting, employees were provided with the required preliminary non-renewal notice. And then after this meeting, there's a final non-renewal notice. If you were to compare the two lists, you would note that there are differences. A couple of employees tendered resignations since the preliminary non-renewal notices. And so these are the remaining final non-renewal notices.
And also just to confirm, there have been all employees per the handbook have a process to work with you once you make this decision.
Yeah, it's actually defined in statute. And then there is a process as well for employees to question reductions, transfers, et cetera.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments before we vote? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Ms. Bach. Yes. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer Rowland.
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes,
Mr. Wadier.
Yes.
and the motion passes. Okay, this time I'll get it in the right order. We're going to go to the motion. Ms. Brzezinski, would you be willing to read that?
It is recommended that the school board approve the 2025-26 administrative contract for Daryl Hanson as Director of Student Success effective July 1st, 2025 for 229 days per year at an annual salary of $120,000, and I so move.
May I have a second? Ms. Heimer Roland, thank you. Go ahead.
I am very pleased with tonight's recommendation that Dr. Hanson be appointed to the Director of Student Success position for next year. She has done outstanding work in the Wauwatosa School District, including her time as an MLSS coordinator, multi-level systems of support. And we are thrilled that she will have this opportunity to continue work in this capacity. Dr. Hanson is with us this evening as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
You like this?
Just, you can step to the microphone though, so our online people can hear as well. Thank you.
To be very
Thanks
quick.
for being here.
My first time in front of the board. Thank you. First, thank you for trusting me with this responsibility. Students at the center of all of our work and my work for the last 27 plus years. And I'm fully committed to this charge. Second, I look forward to continuing to hear your thoughts, your ideas, and your feedback. The exchange of ideas that flow from one person to another and the diversity of those perspectives just provides such positive impact to the work that we're doing. So, and ultimately to benefit our students. So I look forward to hearing more from you and learning more from you and having that exchange of ideas. And I appreciate again this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you for being here and for sharing your thoughts. So is there anything else you want to say?
I think Dr. Hanson said it all.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have the motion, we have the second. Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Ms. Bach. Yes. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer Rowland,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes,
Mr. Wadier.
Yes.
and the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we will turn to a couple of policies that are second readings. We are in the process of shifting who is on the policy committee. So I've talked to Mr. Morris about helping us talk through these for this evening. I also am just leaving the policy committee. I'll be happy to offer some clarification as well, because our current policy members were not at the discussions when we made these changes. Okay, so we will move to Mr. Bauer.
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 3131, reduction in staff, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wadier. Policy committee and or staff that brought this forward, anything that we want to say about this?
Yes, so from the most recent, from the 428 Policy Committee, the notes we had that we sent this back over to be reviewed here. Ms. Elizowski stated that there was pending approval of this policy, that she would recommend updating the administrative guidelines with the similar language that was approved. And then from our as we say, our inside policy, Dr. Zimmern changed that language to that the superintendent shall determine the appropriate employees to quote unquote designate, added that the superintendent shall not use any factors deemed arbitrary or capricious. The reduction in staff process shall follow AG or Administrative Guidelines 3131, reduction in staff, and also notes to see policy 3140 regarding non-renewal, resignation, and termination of policy 3340, the grievance procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. So in summary, this was to try to address the questions that were raised before. Open it for any further comments or questions.
I was the one that asked that this went back to policy, so I appreciate the work that you put in. I think that this is a lot more clear.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate
All right. Then I would, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Ms. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Walland,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes,
Mr. Wadier,
Yes.
the motion passes. Okay, so we move to the second reading and or action to approve policy 5136, personal communication devices.
Our very fun one here at 5136. Lots of action around this one. But yes, we had some notes here. Obviously, when I be kicked back here, Mr. Pinion wanted to obviously refer to any additional information there from the ad hoc committee that we held on May 8th to discuss the policy and to include any discussions. We included some of those things there regarding even some of my feedback and questions on would there be any additional sponsoring regarding lockers and what the details needed to look like to be spelled out in the handbook. Dr. Worley, you had asked about access during lunch hours. Mr. Pinion, any added comments, thoughts?
Sure. And I believe our students might have some thoughts too. Malik, perfect timing for your return. We did have our first of 3 scheduled ad hoc committee meetings. However, the charge of that committee is really to start envisioning what operationalization or implementation of this potential revision looks like. So we spent our time really talking in sort of a structured way. Really good voices around the table of parents, staff, teachers, really students. I thought had amazing voice at that evening's event as well. But really it's starting to answer the question of where do the phones go and what happens when they're out. A lot of different ideas that got us started. So we'll be reconvening again next week, followed by a third session the week after that to really start giving this more teeth. Also in tandem with that, we've been completing a potential problem analysis protocol with this secondary teams around anticipating should this policy move forward, what problems are likely to occur. This is a good activity to do when any kind of major shift happens in terms of anticipating those problems and then not only proactively planning around those anticipated problems in terms of how we might get ahead of them, avoid them, but then also planning for contingencies should and when they happen. So you're having that planning on the front end and on the back end. I say all of that to say, again, that committee is really focused on the how and what that looks like. You have a lot of the data in front of you from the previous discussion of this item in terms of where the community, staff, family, students, and some of the book study participants landed when it came to surveying them. And then the narratives that they completed in those surveys are also being used as part of that potential problem analysis.
Thank you. And I wanted to say I didn't have this put on the floor yet because I do recognize some board members have not been present for all these discussions. So I thought in a sense, while this is a second read, just keep in mind we have the choice of whether to take an action tonight, but we do also have a timeline in that we need to have the handbook by the end of June. So there's one remaining board meeting after this one. But I thought it fairest, given the intense community interest in this topic in multiple directions, that we give people this conversation opportunity. And then we'll see if there is a decision that we want to bring this motion forward. So then there'll be another opportunity for conversation as well. But so we don't get a whole string of amendments, I thought it would be a good idea to have a little bit of a discussion first. Board members. Yes, Ms. Bach.
I guess I would appreciate sending this back to the policy committee just because of what you said. I have not had an opportunity to have any discussion around this. And I just have a lot of questions. I think that I'm not certain that having a policy that is the same at every level is the right way to do this. I agree that elementary students definitely do not need access to cell phones during the school day, but I also think that our high school students, we want them to learn how to use technology safely and responsibly. And I'm not sure that there should be no access. I guess I still have a lot of questions and I'd like to hear from teachers as well. And how, I know that this is part of the discussion, how do we implement this and how do we enforce it? But before we go and make a policy, I want to make sure that we have a good plan for that. So that's why I'd like to send it back to the policy committee.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is also a good forum to ask some of those questions as well, because not everybody's sitting on policy who hasn't had a chance to discuss it yet. So thank you for putting that forward. And that is another possible action that we could take. Let's see, should we get a couple more questions out then? And then maybe Ms. Gideon and Dr. Means can talk to. There are several points that you just asked that have been under discussion and there is some data on it. So it'd be good to share, I think, to the whole group and also to the community. Other questions that you want to queue up? Mr. Wadier and then Ms. Heimer Roland?
Not so much a question, I guess it is. So there's a committee that's working on the, if we said yes tonight for next board meeting, there's a committee that's working through the process of, okay, what do we do with this policy now? I'm good with the policy. I like it, but I do have reservations about voting on something that I don't know if we can implement it and or what are we trying to do to implement it. If we can implement it, then that's fantastic. But what I guess my question really is, if we vote something like this in and we're not able to implement it, I want to make sure that the burden is not something that really just ends up disrupting the learning more than the initial problem. And I don't want our teachers to be vilified or whatever you will for enforcing the policy. So whatever it is, it needs to be, I think, universal and well understood and simplistic. And it's a really hard thing to enforce. We've all gotten tons of emails about this topic and all over the place now, but I'll end with just saying I like where we're going with it, but I would have reservations right now about making a vote on something where we don't have a little bit more definition on the how do we put it in place.
Okay, and Ms. Heimer Roland, and then we'll see students what you would like to add.
Can you, Mr. Pinion, just tell us a little bit more about the committee that's looking at, like, who is on the committee, who's represented?
We have parents, 5 students were invited. I think 4 parents were invited, 2 showed up, several staff as well serve a dual role of parent and staff, many teachers and school administration, district administrators, so it's multidisciplinary.
The board receive a summary of what the committee.
What I will do, and this is where it kind of gets tricky, right? I think in the last read several weeks ago, I said, how much energy do you want in time and resources? Because this is a very large lift. So I'm moving because I think it has to, and there's lots of questions that want to be answered. Our next meeting, we're putting together sort of the flow chart of what happens on the first offense, compliant student, non-compliant, what happens on second, what happens on third and multiple. That's all drafted up. I'm a little hesitant to share all of it because the committee hasn't stamped anything, and there was a lot of ideas that we're trying to bring together, collectively, and some different ideas. I will say we would never recommend something that can't be implemented, and thousands of places have done this already ahead of us. New York just did it themselves as a public district in New York. I mean, we're not alone in this ask. Will it be easy? Absolutely not. You are extinguishing an addiction for thousands of students, and that's not easy. You will see districts that have done this report the extinction burst, and it got a little rough at first until it's enforced consistently. So certainly I understand where everybody is at this. We are trying to be responsive to the increasingly loud and rapid drumbeat around this that our community has been reaching out to for years that got us to this point.
And just to frame this too, the board's role is to ask these questions, but to implement policy, and policy then informs administrative guidelines. So these are really good questions. We don't necessarily have all the knowledge ourselves into how to put this forward. Before we go to students, Mr. Pinion, there were a couple other questions about the question about levels. You wanted to speak to that, or Dr. Means, and the idea of screen time or cell phone learning at those levels, and then what you've been hearing from teachers, and I think I would add administrators because they're part of the implementation.
Sure. I can start with the learning. So we absolutely know that regardless of if the policy changes or not, we need to do a better job teaching students responsible use. So we've engaged library media specialists and the coordinator of all of our library media specialists to take a look at our digital citizenship lessons and really dive deeper into what can we improve upon in terms of responsible use of cell phones, social media, all things in the device that we have in our hand. That might be a blind spot in terms of how well we do that right now. So we know that has to come with this regardless of any change. I'm trying to think what other questions you asked him, Dr. Worley.
The levels and the different.
So we surveyed that too in the responses. On the whole, more people wanted consistency across the board for students, for easy transitions during difficult years, elementary, middle to high school. So that was a consistent learning experience. In the elementary schools, we are seeing some more phones, not quite nearly as many as you would imagine at the secondary levels. Often we get reports about smartwatches in fifth grades, but this year I've heard a couple more instances of fifth graders and cell phones. But on the whole, again, there were some people that had desired different policies. We looked at different districts that had that or didn't. There were more that were just consistent across the board. But the concept of transitions and readiness for those transitions came up quite a bit, as well as the research on developing brains, which is, into 20s. So all of that kind of informed what's in front of you now.
Okay, students? Malik, do you want to go ahead?
This is actually,
This will be the hardest question we get all night, so no, go ahead.
I timed my return pretty well. So I guess two parts of coming from like a student perspective and someone who consistently, obviously I attend school and I engage with staff members, and then also having talked to staff members and parents in the committee, Mr. Wadier and Ms. Bach raised some really important points. Primarily, the problem with at least the general feeling among staff members that I've talked to and also students is the problem with the current policy is not the policy itself, but the lack of enforcement. And that, especially because the major burden, at least and in the way that teachers feel, is that it's placed on them and that they don't receive enough administrative support in handling that. One teacher gave me the example of, for her to write up 3 students for cell phone violations, that takes her entire prep period and a significant portion of her lunch too. And she feels unsupported in that aspect. So I guess that touches more on Mr. Wadier's point. And then when talking in the committee, the biggest roadblock that was reached to consistent enforcement of the policy and pragmatic enforcement of the policy is that not only we already understand that it's incredibly difficult in the current state to enforce it within the classroom. And then you extend that domain into the cafeteria and the hallways, it becomes significantly more difficult to appropriately enforce. Like the whole theory with the cell phone lockers or with caddies is that it can be checked in between periods. And then it becomes significantly more challenging to just place that in one place for the whole day. You raise concerns with who's monitoring that, what happens if staff members leave, how do we have all of the phones in one place at one time? So I guess long story short, how do you I don't understand the jump from the current policy is not being enforced. So let's create a more difficult policy to enforce. Coming from a student perspective and from what staff members have told me.
So, Mr. Payne, one of the things you shared at a previous meeting was the idea that the cell phone lockers would be changed to a location in the school as part of the vision.
Yep, that came up in the committee as an option for, when you're giving students choices of where to store a phone all day, if they're not comfortable for a personal locker, which might be shared with another student, to repurpose and relocate central hubs so that the cell phone lockers would be sort of strategically placed in hallways and different hubs, so you're not bottlenecking students before and after school, and in sight of our security cameras, which they are not right now.
Implementation of this policy, if approved, will be the burden of administration. We understand that we're not going to place teachers in the middle of trying to implement this policy. That hasn't worked. Administrators are bracing themselves. I met with our 2 high school principals today. They are prepared to be villainized. And they're preparing for all the pushback that will come. But in the name of preserving academic culture, they're prepared to move forward. So that's to answer your question. Just plainly and directly, Malik. We understand that the current policy has not been implemented to its fullest degree. In that if we're going to do this well, that it will be a heavier burden on administrators. They're not looking forward to it, not in any way, shape, or form. However, when you consider preserving the academic culture of the buildings, and that's where we are, they understand that this is where we potentially will have to move forward. They also understand that allowing cell phones to be utilized during lunch or hallways is going to make it actually even more difficult to implement. And so an all day policy is just more practical for them to implement. Mr. Pinion?
I'd like to add, I was really trying to do a lot of research about where we had been prior to me even being here for 3 years. And I did find a very significant effort. I believe it was 2019 by Willie Garrison, Frank Calarco, Seth Larson, Mark Carter, where they were really trying to crack down with the current policy back then. They did a board presentation and a really large effort to get everyone to implement it consistently and on board. And then circle back to this 2 years ago when we tried the same effort. And I agree with Malik. It's not being enforced. So you could look at this 2 ways. In one way, you say we're making it harsher. It's going to be harder to enforce. Or you could look at it how some have brought up in different emails and in different conversations that in some ways a ban, when it's not even allowed to be on you, is easier over time to actually enforce because we're not in the gray area of the wiggle room anymore of I can have it, but maybe it's out here, it can't be out there. So in some ways, the more stringent policy, again, these are theoretical, but could be over time easier to uphold.
So we've had one board member propose to take a little more time on this. But before we discuss that, Mr. Wadier.
I think this is still true, but there's been several states that have already written this into their legislation, and Wisconsin is one that's considering it. So we can also sit here and discuss this, and at the end of the day, we could decide on one policy, and then statute could come in and say away all day anyway. So just to throw that out there for consideration.
Ms. Brzezinski?
I'd rather be ahead of that and be doing some of our work on it ourselves before we are being told by somebody else what we have to do. And I think we'll feel a little bit more in control of the decisions that we make that way and can maybe work together better to make the follow through possible. What's best for our kids is what's what's best for our kids, and it's not going to be easy, but we're here to do the hard work. I have confidence in that. I hope that we can also think about how we support all of the adults. If this is a policy that goes through, how we support all of the adults in being good models and being mindful of what students are going through and how we can keep our own use of, what do we call them, PCDs, to a minimum.
Mr. Payne, can I ask a question? Is this a overall consensus issue in all classrooms? Or, because I'm trying to get a gauge on both sides of the scale, are there teachers that are having success with the current policy and having those things go right in their classroom without doing anything? Or is it?
Yes, and so I think the students could probably answer this better than I, but I will say what I've heard anecdotally from teachers is those, and if this came up at our committee, right, last week, is teachers who have done a really good job enforcing it using caddies or lockers, and they make that the standard, express the teachers who do not have made it very hard for them.
Gotcha.
Feel free, those students, you're in these classes every day.
I mean, I do think it really depends. With the current policy, it really does come down to kind of how a teacher runs their classroom. And it does put a lot of strain on our teachers. I do agree with that. But I know that when a teacher makes it very clear what their phone policy is and when students follow it, it is a environment in which everybody has the ability to utilize the devices that we have been given and that we have in a way that is powerful and usable. Like I know, at least in the Spanish classrooms, we consistently use recording. I mean, we use voice memos on phones all the time to be able to record like conversations that we do in Spanish so we can listen back and continually find ways to improve our Spanish on our own. And that's really useful in a classroom. And there are plenty of other ways to do that without using like a personal device, but it is much easier to do it on a personal device than on a computer where you have to have a different application and whatnot. But there are classrooms in which that doesn't work. And I do admit to that. And there are spaces in which there are students who are disrupting a classroom by being on a phone or taking a call in the middle of a class or having the ringer on and their phone's just going off. Like there are instances of that, but at least in my experience, it has been very little. And it usually comes down to the teacher and the student, which is hard for our teachers, but yeah.
In my experience, most of my teachers are able to appropriately enforce the policy. However, I would imagine that the teachers who struggle with their classes, specifically like an English teacher I spoke to at the PCD policy meeting or committee meeting, it seems that because she isn't being provided with the administrative support that she desperately needs and requests, that problem spills over into other classes. Whereas I would imagine, this is just my prediction, that if you had appropriate administrative support, it would be less support than one would imagine, because by simply supporting those teachers in those instances, then that sets the bar for the rest of the classrooms, and the classrooms that are already enforcing it won't require that support.
And administration, Malik, would tell you that the policy before the board this evening is actually easier for them. The current policy is too gray. It's too gray. There's too many what ifs or what happened here or how will this one classroom implement it versus another one. The policy that's before the board this evening that says away all day is actually easier for that support administratively to be put in place.
May I share?
And I think we had a survey that we surveyed staff, and what was the results of the survey, Mr. Payne?
The staff, of the 217 staff, 84% wanted a version of Away All Day. I would also add, when we ran the numbers, I think it was roughly 3 weeks ago, I haven't done it since, there was about over 850 cell phone violations this school year. Yeah. And it is hard to track in logs. So there's probably more that we're not on the record to be fully transparent. That was the data from this year as of a few weeks back.
Would it be fair to say that administrators have been trying to implement this policy?
Yes, if
and,
you look
and
at
we've
West-
now had a couple of years.
West has been a
Exactly. that's
champion in
West.
trying to enforce it. We used their infographic as a model at the committee meeting in terms of how they've outlined, communicated, provided administrative support for first, second, third, fourth offenses. They have it very clearly outlined. It's been communicated to all stakeholders, and they're part of that 850.
In fact, the faculty at West, upon Mr. Gala's entry into the role, indicated that that was a major issue for them. And they rallied. And they, prior to the cell phone lockers, they created their own type of.
They had caddies before we even talked about it.
Before the district even made the investment. So we've been trying to respond to teachers indicating that this is a problem of some sort for them for years. But the problem is that our current policy does live in the gray. This is to move us in a direction where there's no ambiguity.
Okay, given the time, I'm just going to ask our board members, would you like to go around and suggest whether we set it aside or do we want to take a vote on whether to send it back to committee? Because we have an action, or we have an either or, right? But we may not all agree on whether it should go back to committee. It has been proposed that it could go back to committee.
Will the committee, not the policy committee, the cell phone committee?
What would be the policy committee would go back to?
No, I mean, when are they done meeting? That like ad hoc committee?
We have our second session Thursday, the 22nd, and the third and final Thursday, the 29th.
May?
Yes.
Sorry,
And the next policy committee would be the first
okay.
Monday. Is it still? No, when do you have your policy committees?
May 19th, a week from today.
May 19th.
I would just point out from a procedural standpoint, that committee is the equivalent. They're developing the equivalent of administrative guidelines. And
the committee that
Mr. Pena is referencing. So typically the way that policy works is that once the board develops or approves a policy, then we put in the administrative guidelines to make it work. It would be reversed if you were waiting on potentially the administrative guidelines to direct your approval of a policy.
I guess I'm just trying to think of the new members.
And yeah, I think the proposal is there been enough time and enough resources provided to new members for
So like what
to be
more
prepared to
information
vote?
can we give the new members before they vote?
But that would be odd. That would be
We're
odd
kind of in
for
a
us.
weird spot.
Yes.
As
Yeah,
a
we are.
board
We
to
knew
be
we were
voting on like
in
a
a weird
really
spot.
big change, so, but I hear you.
But my recommendation would be maybe you delay the vote until June 9th to allow new board members to ask Mr. Pinion questions. I don't know if our recommendation would not be to change the language at this time, but we haven't given new board members the runway to do the type of inquiry that existing board members have had.
Okay, fair enough. So rather than the proposal to send it back to policy, the idea would be to allow the time for not to vote on it, but not take action tonight, but to grow from this conversation, give board members opportunity to investigate further and get some of the data. I don't know how much you've shared, Mr. Pinion. I know that this is taking a lot of your time, but if you could, resubmit, or if there's a way to make sure everybody has all those surveys and documents that we've had before.
The actual action is to vote on taking no action tonight?
No, we didn't put anything we did not move it on to a motion. I intentionally did not put it on as a motion. We always have the choice to act or not. The proposal is to re-put it onto the June 9th agenda. Not to send it back to policy at this time, but to allow us more time as board members to,
Does that realistically give Mr. Pinion and everyone?
Tight.
it's tight.
I mean, we're moving forward to this committee either way at this point. They're
Right, but
invested.
in
It was
terms
a
of
really
the
good group.
handbook,
So
handbook
there's
is-
two different ways we can work on the handbooks, and I don't want to bring the board into too much of the weeds of all of that, but we can link directly to an external document, certainly link to the policy, whichever that means. But it is probably healthier in this specific case to be able to spell it out exactly in the handbook. So that would be ideal state, is to actually take the guidelines, spell them out in the handbooks versus linking to an external doc that is very unlikely to even be opened. So I'd rather live in the ideal state. It's tight, but we can do it. And I want people to feel comfortable. This is a big deal.
Their action or alteration that would then be able to happen before the next vote, or would it come to the next vote exactly how it is right now?
The suggestion from the district is they wouldn't have further, the policy committee members may have further amendments.
You have no recommendations to change the policy as it stands right now.
So if you do want to give another space for board members, I mean, there can also be amendments made when it comes for action. If you want to give another opportunity for the policy committee to discuss it, we can do that. We've done that just recently with another policy. Or we can decide just not to take action tonight, in which case it would come on to the next board agenda.
What do you guys like suggest? You're both on policy and new committee members. What would you like?
I'd like the opportunity to go through the data more closely and just to feel more confident in the way I vote. I just think it affects everyone, and and it affects everyone differently depending on, you know, their age and their role in the district. And I think I just would like more time to go through the data. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know how I will vote, but I don't want to come back and think, oh, I wish I could have that vote back.
And both options that we're considering right now would give you time. It's just a question whether that time involves a conversation of the policy committee or not.
It's a fair request.
Yeah.
And between now and June 9th gives us plenty of time where you can work with Mr. Pinion and myself and ask any questions and do more research before a vote. Makes a lot of sense.
And the previous policy committee anticipated this might be where we would need to go. So that's why I didn't move it onto the table for tonight.
I would prefer just to have more time to do a little bit of my reading of that background information that was used to get to this point.
Okay.
I would be comfortable voting today, but I understand the concerns.
Okay. So we will, yeah.
I'm malleable, and after hearing what I've heard, I would be able to cast my vote tonight if we went that way.
I'm also able to cast, but I feel like given the transition, that it makes more sense to, and that given that we can make it work and the administrative guideline committee can work in parallel with us and there's been good communication, I think it's more inclusive to put it on to the next board meeting. I don't think we have to take an action to do that.
And this is one of those rare policies that if you want to see what the administrative guidelines will look like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, may I? So if we come back for June 9th, what I can do is assemble, I mean, at that point, we'll have quite a bit of content from the committee meeting collapsed and queued up. Maybe not completely stamped from a standpoint of getting it to all stakeholders, right? With a typical guideline, we already have the policy in place and there's sort of a process when something this large, a change that's being affected. In terms of how we move through the different layers of getting different stakeholder groups like this committee, and then in front of administration to work out other nuances, et cetera. But I would likely be able to have then not only some level of a draft without hopefully getting people too wound up, right? Because the more you make the work transparent, which we always want to do, but when you do that in progress, you run some risks as well, right? Because you're sort of, in the mix of cooking it, if you will. We're also in the midst of an FAQ of all the questions we've been kind of assembling. So I could be able to make some of that visible, or at least share the thinking of that committee, as well as some of the potential problem analysis output and the FAQ that might really help, which has some of the research linked on all sides, right? We tried to get an unbiased sampling of the research and provide that as extra content before the night.
I think that's a very healthy way forward, and it's very much within the norms of collaboration that we're trying to work on. So thank you for raising up that need and that request so that we could move in a more collaborative way as we go forward with new board members having a chance to look at the information. All of us having a chance to review again.
Thanks. I don't want to take things lightly that mean a lot to people.
Okay, so what we're doing then is opting for the option to not take action on the cell phone policy this evening. And we will return to look at this on the next board agenda. Thank you. So given the timing and what we have left to do, including a closed meeting, I want to just run this by. I wanted to propose we do need to cover first reading of policies letter A. And we can explain why that is, but we need to cover that. And then we're pretty sure, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, that 5411, the third grade promotion, and the grading and the class rank could be considered at a future meeting as a first read.
Yes.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
You those have to go into the student handbook.
There's,
Attention.
I mean, they could. The policy committee has no recommended changes on either of those policies.
AP is probably the most
Right, because it's
significant, but
AP third grade
if we get to it
promotion.
on June 9th, we'll still be okay.
okay.
Yeah, thanks for asking it. Okay, everyone's good with that. Then we want to do our first review or first reading of the non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities. This is a rescind. Basically, because of a change in the federal law and rulings, we have to take this out. We only recently put it in. We have to take it out and we have to return to our 2020 policy. Mr. Pinion, did I present that well?
Perfectly,
Okay.
as recommended by legal counsel as well.
Okay. So the first read is an opportunity before it goes back to policy committee for board members to raise any questions or thoughts on that. So the policy committee can consider that. It's been recommended that it be rescinded by our legal counsel and because of the federal regulations, but we aren't voting on it yet tonight. Comments or questions? Yes.
I just think it's important for the community to know, and maybe new board members, that our other policies do protect a large percentage of our student and staff population. So rescinding this doesn't say that we're not.
Right, we go to 20, what we had is terms of wording for 2020, yeah, and
Concern about that, so.
right. And yeah, anyone else? Yeah, like,
So with rescinding this, like, what does it change, like, materially? Like, I imagine there's a small impact in student lives in general, but like, what is the, I guess, more specific? Like you referred to, it covers the vast majority. What are the parts that aren't being covered anymore?
I can wait a little bit. So you'll see the student groups are still named in here. That was my question as well to legal counsel. It's a lot more on the operational side of how it plays out as a compliance officer, as an investigator, what needs to be disclosed, what doesn't. A lot of those operations have shifted rapidly from one administration to the next. So essentially, I think when we talked through this with legal counsel, this does not compromise our values of how we protect students and who we protect. And we know, as Ms. Heimer-Rollins said, we have other policies that also are in place that even spell that out to different degrees. So for me, this doesn't really have a huge student direct impact as much as it does in the procedural process, if you will.
Other questions or comments? One of the things that we can make sure that people have is a link or an information to the policy that will be going forward, because that, I think reading that, you'll see, we've looked at it within the policy committee, but when we rescind, we don't necessarily pair them, but we could provide that link.
Yeah.
Okay. So that goes back to the policy committee to put on an agenda, and I would encourage that to be soon, because we need to be make our decision about being in compliance and whether we rescind this sooner rather than later. So if you could get that on, that would be great. And we'll also make sure that board members have the information about what the remaining policy that continues forward, what that would look like. Okay. So then we're going to move forward to number 9, board governance. A, action to approve graduation candidates.
Board members have received, oh, I'm sorry.
Do we need to have a motion to table the other three?
We don't want to table them.
Not table, to move them to later?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. We've run out of time before. If the policy committee is okay with that, generally, we do move that forward, as long as the administration isn't put in difficult straits in terms of timing. So they will need to come up, particularly B, but I think B, C, and D all need to come up at the next board meeting for their first read. Okay. We received a list of the, this is the fun part of being on the board, of the graduating class of 2025 from Wauwatosa West and Wauwatosa East. Phil.
Yes, it is recommended that the school board approve the attached list of graduates from East and West High Schools with the understanding that the students will complete all high school graduation requirements, and I so move.
May I have a second? Ms. Bach, thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Ms. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer-Roland,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes,
Mr. Wadier.
Yes.
and the motion passes. They were sitting there with their fingers crossed. Make sure you know the understanding part. Don't stop yet. It's just a few more weeks you can do this. And we're very proud of all of our graduates. Moving to letter B, action to approve school board graduation participation, Wauwatosa West, June 13th at 7 p.m. and Wauwatosa East, June 14th at 11 a.m. Ms. Heimer-Roland?
Does recommend.
Oh, we have to, we have to actually figure out who it is, people-wise.
Oh.
And then reading forward on, yeah. So we'll read it as soon as we know who it is, who's attending, because it looks like the names have to be in there. So again, this is hoped for, but we also recognize that board members have significant other responsibilities in their lives. And as we talked about last time, we try to get some to come and to spread ourselves among the 2 graduations. So I'll just You look like you're ready to speak, Sarah, so let's start on your side.
I'm excited. I'm going to both.
Yes.
All right.
I'll be at home.
Can you speak up, please?
Mr. Morris said he will be out of town for both.
Thank you.
I can go to both.
I am both.
Please.
Were we supposed to let Julia know ahead of time though to get?
No,
We already
we'll-
decided.
We'll
No.
act on it
Oh,
tomorrow
okay.
morning.
I can go to the Tosi East graduation.
I'm out of town for both.
Unavailable for both. Okay, that's fine. So, just to review, Liz, we have, at West, Ms. Brzezinski, Mr. Bauer, Dr. Worley, and at East, the same list plus you. Perfect.
It is recommended that the school board approve the following board members: Sarah Brzezinski, Chris Bauer, Lynn Worley, to attend the Wauwatosa West graduation on June 13th at 7 p.m. And Sarah Brzezinski, Chris Bauer, Lynn Worley, and Liz Heimer-Rolland to attend the Wauwatosa East graduation on June 14th at 11 a.m. And I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Okay, Ms. Summers, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Brzezinski? Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Ms. Bach?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Heimer-Rolland?
Yes.
Dr. Worley?
Yes,
Mr. Wadier?
Yes.
motion passes. Those of you who are attending will have more information forthcoming on all of the pieces of that. Regalia and parking and time to arrive, etc. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we'll do that as well.
Okay.
We are now to item number 10, which is to adjourn into executive close.
What about nice?
Oh, 9C, I'm sorry, thank you. 9C, jumping ahead there, too excited. Discuss the potential for the recording of all committee meetings. So I will tee this up. This is a discussion and then we'll soon have an action item on it. There's a variety of different ways that we handle committee meetings when it comes to recording of those meetings, and even recording itself has a number of aspects to that. Do you record and have them live like we have this meeting? And we've had discussions for a while about this. And one of the aspects of this has been the requirement of district resources balanced with the providing of opportunity, both typically what we're asking here is recording so that people who can't attend would be able to look at it later, but we can also entertain the broader idea, the more immediate the participation, like a meeting like tonight takes more resources to manage. We do have a couple of committees right now that are recording. Finance is recording. The subcommittee of finance has been recording mostly because we have, in that case, we have the need to record in order for the person putting the minutes together to be able to go back and watch it, given the timing at which it happens. And we also have a number of community members who, on that subcommittee, who are not board members, and so trying to provide electronic access to them. Are there any other committees no, the other two committees, policy and legislative, have not been recording, but there have been requests from the community for that to happen. So we wanted to start a conversation about that to get a sense of where board members are at, so that then we can come up with a recommendation of which way to move. So open the floor.
just share what we've been doing in finance. So since August, we have like the owl camera, and Corey helped set that up. We do, Corey is in with us. So when we're thinking about resources, he does stay with us the whole meeting. So just thinking about capacity for our staff, because we've had technical difficulties and super helpful to have somebody there who can help right away. And we don't, we take public comment at our meetings, but at the end of the meeting.
And that actually means there has been some discussion about, though it would be a cost, the potential for better equipment that would make it less staff reliant.
To make the equipment more intuitive for recording, there will be an investment. If we wanted to do so. Otherwise, as Ms. Heimer-Ron described, you have to make a commitment to having a staff member from the information technology team there to record the meeting.
And to just help with screen sharing gets a little bit tricky when it's not live like this. So there's just, you know, a lot. It's just saying we'll record that.
We also polled school districts in the metro area. Half of them are recording their committee meetings and half are not. It's a decision that the 7 of you have to make in regards to what culture you want with your committee meetings.
Yes, Mr. Wadir.
I so defer to Liz, but I think having it for the finance and resource is still key with building trust back up. And even though it's not a live recording like this would be, where someone watch and be able to comment remotely, it gives people the ability to look back and that call for transparency since the day after I was appointed. And this is a great way to provide it, because it's all related to money and where the money is going and decisions being made. I could see it being helpful for policy as well, but again, I don't think a live necessarily serve any purpose. I guess I don't know how many people out there want to go rewatch that. I think there's maybe only like 100 views on finance one at any given time.
Yes, Malik.
How frequently do people like engage in public comment
I
at
think we've
those?
had 2 people since August.
Like 2 people,
2 people, like the whole.
like total. Okay.
We probably every other month, the policy, have had public comment. I wouldn't say it's a broad number of people. It tends to be a fairly consistent group that is making public comment. I mean, I will say under state law, somebody can record the meeting, but I think the thought of recording would be to then not require that someone show up in order to provide a recording. So policy committee is probably the other place. It's a good point, Mr. Wadir, that we don't have to do the same thing with every committee. If we think that there's better application of this to 1 or 2 or all, that would be something to think through as well.
Dr. Worley, if you would like some input on the burden on the technology operations department, I'm here and very happy to give it.
I think we would like that. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Please.
So what we enjoy right now in conference room C was purchased and installed pre-pandemic. We didn't do any live streaming. The purpose of that was just to record. As we've evolved as a district, the pandemic introduced streaming, but then recording was requested in other locations. And from an equipment standpoint, we've band-aided stuff together. We've use some Alcams that we had in inventory. We've never, in like 10 years, we have not upgraded or purchased any equipment. And the reason for technology operations staffing at those meetings is directly because of that you need that technology support during those meetings. So when those meetings are conducted during the day, I'm very much the first one to say that we are staffed sparsely. And to have Corey or Tim or somebody during the day at a committee meeting takes that resource away from being able to assist teachers in the classroom and provide face-to-face technology support as they do as a regular job. When they're attending those meetings after hours, as Corey is tonight and when Tim is, they're then taking flex time to do that, right? So they're leaving early on Fridays, generally on Fridays, which again leaves my department a body short. So there is a significant burden based on the way we do it right now and that we have not invested in equipment that is turnkey and reliable. Now, some other districts do this, but they have invested in that equipment where they can just push a button and start recording and streaming straight away, and it's completely hands off, and they don't even need technology support in the room. And additionally, some of those districts also have dedicated personnel that are assigned to that task, right? And other districts outsource that resource as well. So just purely from a selfish perspective in trying to optimize and maximize what comes from my department to the district to support the classrooms and the teachers, if we were to start recording every single meeting, it will impact that. There will be a negative impact on that unless we were to invest in more refined, optimized, turnkey type solution to make it happen that didn't suck up department resources as much. If we do it as is right now, technology support for teachers and administrators and students and even families, will suffer as a result. Now, it might not be dramatic, but there will be, there's a cost. There's a cost to it if we do it as we are right now.
Thank you, Jamie. Board members, any very brief questions on what was just said?
One question I would have is, in that space, Jamie, is there an additional burden from a technological perspective of housing or storing these meetings? I'm assuming like these Zooms are stored digitally in the cloud someplace. Are we paying at it for storage or posterity? Is there a period of time, statute of limitations that we have to hold on to these since they do become part of essentially the public record and have to sit out there for, I don't know, Wisconsin is 7, 9 years, 7 years?
Yeah, as it stands today, no. The actual conversion and compiling and uploading of the video, that actually consumes a minimal amount of time. It takes time because of the processing back end, but clicking a few buttons to compile it and upload it, we all multitask. So that happens sort of like in the background. We store all the videos on our YouTube channel. There's no cost for that, and there is no expiration for that. I mean, if you look at our YouTube channel right now, we have, I think our earliest meeting is 2010. We've got like 15 years worth of board meetings up there. Now, does that mean that YouTube will always allow us to store all those videos free of charge? I don't know. That's up in the air. But at the moment, the production of the video, once it's recorded and uploading it to YouTube, has a minimal cost, and the storage has zero cost.
Thank you.
I would propose that we think this through on what we've heard, identify any questions or further information without creating a large burden on our district staff, and maybe bring this back if there's room on the next agenda so the community can get clarity on this, bring it back as an action item. Does that sound good? Okay, thank you. And thank you, Jamie, for all that information. It's very helpful. Okay, now we will move to number 10, adjourn into executive closed session. And it looks like Jason has won the opportunity to read the motion. Oh, yes, sorry. The time is 9:11 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn into executive closed session?
It is recommended that the school board adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85 paren 1 close paren G close paren, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, and Wisconsin statute 19.85 paren 1 close paren B close paren, considering dismissal, demotion, licensing, or discipline of any public employee. Specifically, discussion with legal counsel regarding personnel matter, and I so move.
May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Morris. Ms. Summers, please call the roll.
Ms. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Ms. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Rowland,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Mr. Wadier.
Yes.
The motion passes, and I will also mention that because there's no action related to this, we don't anticipate coming back into open session, but moving to adjournment at the end of the closed session. So we do move now into closed session. Thank you.